So today we have Alex Budak, professor from UC Berkeley, Haas School of Business, specialized in the field of social entrepreneurship, microleadership, and changemaking with us here today. Welcome. To start off, would you please introduce yourself and your field of expertise?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be with you. As you mentioned, I wear a few different hats. So before joining UC Berkeley, I was a social entrepreneur. I co-founded an organization called Start Some Good, which, as the name implies, was all about how do we help more people around the world, more change makers, start doing good, and especially focused on the sort of financial levers. So kind of a fintech company before fintech was cool. Then, as love happens, I fell in love with a woman who became my wife, and she got a job offer in Stockholm, Sweden. So we moved there, lived there for 3 years. While I was there, I ran an incubator for social entrepreneurs. And then back in 2019, joined Berkeley Haas, and I'm so happy to be here. I developed and teach a class called Becoming a Changemaker, and it's exactly the class I wish I could have taken when I was a student, and that's sort of inspired me to then write a book by the same name. And so I absolutely love teaching. I think at my core, I'm an educator, a teacher. And then, of course, I'm also a very proud dad of a 3-year-old.
That was amazing. And I have taken your Changemaker class before, and I truly, truly loved it. Found it super valuable. And can you please now share a impactful or memorable moment in your career journey?
Sure. I mean, there's so many, but I guess the one that I'll speak to now is that moment when we decided to launch Start Some Good. And so,
Mhm.
it's a very scary moment. Brene Brown does really great work, and she talks about how there's no such thing as courage without vulnerability. And so it was a very vulnerable moment as well. And we had told a bunch of our friends we'd be starting this. We had partners and other people that were waiting to launch when our website launched. And it's a crazy feeling to sort of put something out into the world and you really have no idea how it'll be received. Of course, we did so, launching a website that had plenty of bugs, plenty of errors, plenty of features that were missing. But as I think about doing it, it's this really powerful thing where it's like you kind of have this vision for how the world can be, a thing you want to put out into the world, and then having that sort of courage to make it go live and put it out there. In the case of a website, it's actually pretty anticlimactic. I kind of imagine it's like there's one big red button you press and like your website's live. You actually just go into like DNS settings and update IP records. It's pretty boring. But then once the website goes live, then it's like, okay, wow, this is really a thing. And then, of course, that was only the very, very, very beginning of a long journey. But I think back to that moment of being like, wow, I want this thing to be something in the world. And now here it is.
Wow, truly amazing. Now moving on to the book you said you published called Becoming a Changemaker. I actually have it right here. Loved it. I'm halfway through, almost done. For anyone who wants to write their own book and perhaps publish it, what was that process like? And did you face any challenges that could have been prevented if someone had given you advice beforehand?
Oh yeah, I learned a ton writing a book. And I think one of the main things I learned is just how hard writing a book is. I hope that a lot of people watching this, that you'll go write your book because you need to put your voice out into the world. You have something really meaningful to share. So please do that. But please also know that it's really hard. There's the writing process, which for me was actually on the easier side, like that sort of first draft. That's where you put ideas out there. And I think a big part of it is finding your own rhythm. I played around with it. I tried to see when do I do my best work. I tend to be sort of a night owl, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll do my best work from like 10 p.m. till midnight. But found nope, that didn't really work. Then I tried doing things in the morning and found, okay, actually that's the best thing to kind of do work before I start too much other work. And then I played around with, should I do a 1 hour writing session, a 5 hour writing session? And I found that 2 hours was about right. So you'll find your own rhythm, but I think it's important you find that and you sort of work within your own biorhythms to work at the time that's best for you. But then the other thing that I learned is that the book publishing world is just very gatekeepery. Like I really don't like that because I think so many people have a story to tell, but it is so much about like finding the right people and making that pitch. And unfortunately, the book world is not just about writing good books. It's a business. We'll be able to sell enough copies of the book. And so I think I underappreciated that going in, just how much work goes on the author's end, that it's not just writing the book. Even if you get a deal with a fancy publisher, that still so much of the work is up to you to like reach out to media outlets, to be on podcasts, to get people to know about the book. And so I think I wish I had known going into it just how much work there was, that once you finish the book, really the work is just beginning.
Mm. Did you find any way of publishing or marketing that worked really well for you?
One of my approaches was to do a bunch of podcasts. I think it's
Mm.
important you find like what your natural platform is. So some people are really good on TV, some people are really good at writing. I think I'm best in sort of an educator role, kind of like being a professor.
Mhm.
And so I love doing podcasts because it's very hard to tell how many people that listen to a podcast. But for me, the book wasn't just about selling copies. It was about putting ideas out into the world to help anyone anywhere become a change maker. And the way I looked at it was that if someone could listen to me in a conversation with someone for 45 minutes, but even if they don't, I got to spend 45 minutes with them, sharing my ideas with them. And for me, the book is a vehicle to share those ideas. And so, yeah, I loved doing podcasts. I did about 50 of them as part of my book launch and got to meet some really wonderful people and have some really good conversations.
Mm. I love how you said you compare the book to a vehicle. I think that's like a really nice analogy for it. And if you were to give someone who wants to become a change maker three advice, what would you give them?
Well, the first one, which anyone that's taken my class will know, is you've got to change your relationship with failure. So
Mhm.
that's one of the assignments that I have my students do. On one day, we talk about failure, we do case studies, look at data, but then towards the end of class, I go, look, you have 15 minutes, you have to go leave the classroom, you have to go fail. You have to purposely get rejected. And Berkeley students, like any high achieving students, that scares them a lot because who would want to go fail purposefully? But it unlocks something for them. They realize that when they fail, that it's not as scary as it seems. And that sometimes they ask for something, they're sure they'll get rejected and they
Mhm.
actually get that thing. And so that exercise, students tell me, changes their whole perspective on failure. And I think that's crucial as a change maker because by definition, you're questioning the status quo. You're doing things that people aren't comfortable with. And so you're going to meet a lot of resistance. Even if your idea is good, plenty of people won't like it. And so getting used to failure, getting comfortable with failure, there's nothing meaningful that's been done without a lot of failure along the way. And so that's the first one, is to sort of feel like, yeah, okay, I can fail. I can go on. I think the second one is rooted in one of Berkeley Haas's defining leadership principles, which is beyond yourself. That you got to think about, how can I be of service to other people? Sometimes I meet with folks who sort of want to be famous, they want to be an influencer, they want to have done something great, but they don't really know what that thing is. And I always tell them, start by being of service, by finding a person you can help, a community you can be of service to. And by as much as possible, try to share that power with them. Don't just be sort of the person who parachutes in as like a savior, but actually partner with folks and try to listen to them. They know best what they need and try to be helpful to them. And then the third one is to not lose your hope. I think, especially among Gen Z, you have all too many reasons to feel a sense of hopelessness when you look at the world you're inheriting with racial injustice, climate change, income inequality. There's all kinds of really big systemic problems. And I don't think anyone would blame you if you feel a bit hopeless from it. But change makers find hope. It isn't like blind hope. It's not just like, oh, I just wish things were better. There's actually real power in a belief that tomorrow can be better than today, and that sense that, yeah, I can do something about it. So don't let anyone tell you that you don't have a right to feel frustrated, to feel hopeless. You do. But I hope that despite that, you'll still find reasons to hope because the world needs you to step up and lead the change you want to see.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought up failing forward because that was one of the lessons I remember very deeply in your course. And actually after learning that from your class, I I would say that I was more proactive in asking for help and asking like to conduct interviews like this one. I feel like if it wasn't for your inspiration, I wouldn't have honestly been like a really different version of myself right now. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate it. I think we can pull out a lesson there, which is, that idea when you reached out to me for this conversation. The worst possible thing that happens is I tell you, sorry, I don't have time. Like, really, the downside is pretty low. Maybe somewhere between is like I say, I can't do it, but I'm at least honored you reached out. And then on the upside, which is probably a pretty good chance, is I say yes, and cool things can happen as a result. And so, yeah, so much of change making is being willing to put yourself out there. And so I see you for that. I'm glad that you did.
Thank you so much. Now, for the next question, is there any tool or canvas model that someone can use to help them get started with their change making journey?
Oh, you asked that like someone who's read my book and taken my quiz. You know the answer.
Exposed.
So yeah, I developed a tool which is called the Changemaker Canvas. If anyone watching wants to take a look, you can go to alexbudak.com/canvas and download a copy. And it's inspired by the fact I've worked with changemakers all around the world, from people who are just at the beginning of their careers to senior executives. And the truth is that no matter how experienced you are, change is really scary and change is really hard. And so I built this tool called the Changemaker Canvas, which helps you break down change and move it from this really like overwhelming, exhausting problem to an execution problem. So you spend time up front, and the canvas walks you through a bunch of the building blocks you need to lead change, from deeply understanding the problem, looking at it from multiple angles, to thinking about, who are the key evangelists, who are the people whose approval you might need, to how do you think about systems change, not just putting a band-aid on a cut. So it walks you through all of that. It might take an hour or two to fill out. But then once you've done that, then you've got everything on paper, you've done the hard work of thinking, and then you've got a plan. And then it's just about, okay, I know what to do. Now you just have to go do it. And that tears down some of those barriers of moving from idea into action.
Yes, I totally agree. And what would you say is the biggest challenge in the process of becoming a change maker?
So for me, it's the identity making piece. I think many of us, when we hear the word change maker, we could probably think of someone. Oftentimes, we think of someone famous. So I don't know, Michelle Obama, Beyonce, Jackie Robinson. Who knows? You probably have that change maker that comes to mind for you. And so we can kind of see, like, yeah, okay, change makers are out there. But I think often we think, well, that's something that someone that's more famous than me does, more outgoing than me does, more resourced than me, or whatever. You can tell all those stories. And so I think a hurdle, but one of those important ones, is that identity making piece, to start seeing yourself as a change maker. In my teaching and in my writing, like the beating heart of all of it is inclusivity. Like I really want people to see different stories, different examples of change makers, and bring in a bunch of guest speakers to my class, all with different lived experience, all with the goal that maybe not every person will resonate with you, but every person will have at least one that does. And I think you can start seeing yourself in these change makers. And so making that shift from being like, okay, cool, change making is a thing, it's inspiring, to being like, no, I'm a change maker. I think that is such a crucial hurdle. And once you get over that, then a lot of pieces fall into place.
I think that touches on to my next question, actually. Does someone have to be rich, popular, or successful in order to become a change maker?
No, absolutely not. So, I mean, of course, let's be real that having those resources, having that power, that privilege, it helps. It's easier. The barriers are lower, perhaps. But no, like at its core, each and every one of us can be a change maker. And the book is filled with stories of all kinds of people who do so without being in positions of leadership or power or privilege. So I don't pretend it's not easier in many ways, but it's something accessible to all of us. One of the key themes of change making is this idea of leading change from where you are. And so, yes, you could be a CEO and lead change. But in the book, I also tell the story of Kat Davis, who was a worker at a Walmart in North Carolina. And she led this movement throughout the company to fight for equal parental leave policies. And she led it from almost as low on the positional power hierarchy as you could be, but she built a groundswell of momentum and support. And so the stories of change makers are out there from all walks of life. So yeah, no matter where you are, you can lead change from wherever you might be.
Definitely. The next question is, how can I inspire someone else to become a change maker? Perhaps they're resentful of becoming a change maker, but if I know that them improving and going out of their comfort zone might help improve their life, how can I inspire or help them change?
I think there's two ways to do it. So one is leading by example. So if you're friends with them and they see you doing things, they might feel inspired to be like, wow, if they can do it, then why can't I? So that's one way, and that might reach some people. But perhaps the most cynical won't be too moved by that. And so I think the other way is to actually involve them in your change. We use the word change maker, and it could sound like I'm focused on the individual, like this one hero that does everything. But really, I believe change making is a team sport. And so I think your lens should be, how could I get this person involved in my change? Find small ways to delegate, follow small ways to get involved. There's a framework I like, which comes from the consulting firm Nobel, that's Nobel. And they talk about the three types of people you meet while leading change. So you'll meet the champions. These are people who believe in your idea right away. And for them, you say, delegate to them, get them involved. Then there's the fence sitters. Those are people who go kind of either way. Like maybe they like the idea, not sure if it'll work. And we tend to spend a lot of time focused on these people. But Nobel says, no, don't spend time with them. If you get traction, they'll come on board. And the third part are the cynics. These are the people that are cynical about change. And they say that often cynics are just disappointed idealists. Sometimes the most cynical people are actually people that believe in and want change. They've just seen change come and go, and it has never changed for them, or they've been gotten their hopes dashed too many times. And so instead of seeing people who are cynical as sort of the enemies of change, I think that's where we need to use a little bit of empathy to get to know them, to understand them. Where are they coming from? Why are they skeptical about this? Listen to them, and then find ways to make them feel really heard. And then find ways to get them involved in the change. And that can be a powerful way to turn your cynics into champions.
Yes. And do you think in modern day AI and technology can affect someone's ability to become a change maker? Do you think it supports it or worsens it?
Well, I think first we should look at just how we deal with change. So AI is like a massive shock to the system that I think is going to radically change everything. And so I think the first thing we need to think about is what's your approach to this? I see far too many people that are in the middle of their careers, people, I don't know, 40, 50 years old, that are sort of like, this AI thing is scary. Like, I'm just going to try to hold on. Like, I'm not going to change the way I'm doing things. Like, let me just, like, I already found success, keep going.
Mhm.
And then there's people, which I think is the way you need to be, which is to say, look, we can't slow down change. You could say, I don't want AI to be here, but you don't get a lot of say in that. It's happening. So then you can learn, how can I learn AI? How do you get so comfortable with AI and change around us so they can not just survive it, but I can shape, steer, and lead it to make it work better for me, for my team, for my community, for the world. And so I think it's natural you'll fall into one of these two fronts. I see AI is actually just accelerating both of these. I see more people falling into either end. And so I think we've got to find that change maker mindset to say, look, it's not something we can just hold on to and just hope it passes in 5 years. It's a thing. So let's learn to start embracing it. Now, in terms of how we practically embrace it for change making, I think that's the exciting part is that we don't know, honestly, yet. Like we're all still just trying to figure it out. But my best advice for people that are scared by it, especially change makers, is just start playing around with it. Like just start using it. You don't have the perfect plan yet, but find ways it could be interesting. The one caveat that I'll add, though, is that change makers, by definition, need to question the status quo. They need to disrupt, they need to come up with new ideas. And I do think there's a risk that these large language learning models is they are very good at following existing patterns. And they're, at least right now, not so good at thinking super creatively or outside the box. And so I think you do run the risk if you use AI too much, that you might not be the type of disruptive change maker that we need. So I'd say, use it as a tool, but don't rely on it so much because I think then there can be pressure to just sort of replicate the way things are already working.
Yes. I feel like if people rely too much on AI intelligence, they might lose the best part of being a human, which is creativity, courage, and just individual thought processes that is valuable only that human have. And for you, do you have a favorite change maker in mind? It's super hard to decide, but just want to ask, put that out there.
It's so hard to decide. And again, I'm telling stories of all kinds of change makers, but I guess my favorite change maker of all time is Jackie Robinson. So he was, like me, a UCLA alum, but he's the person that broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball. And what I deeply respect and value about Jackie Robinson is that he was obviously an amazing athlete. He was a four-sport athlete at UCLA, but he probably wasn't the most talented athlete. The reason that he was such a good fit to be the first Black player in the major leagues was because of his changemaker qualities. It wasn't just he was the best athlete, it was these sort of other changemaker things, his changemaker mindset, his resilience. He put up with so much and he kept being resilient. His empathy, his courage, these types of traits that I believe are learnable and practicable. And so that inspires me that it's not just about your sort of natural talents to be a change maker. It's about these sort of developable skills, this mindset, your leadership skills that really make the difference. And so, yeah, Jackie continues to inspire me even to this day.
Definitely. And as we conclude, is there any message or advice you would like to give to my audience?
I begin my class at Berkeley with one slide, and the slide says, "The world has never been more ready for you." And that's my belief, is that there's never been a better or more important time to lead change than right now. Like we said, there's big systemic changes that the world is facing. But there's also never been a better or more important time for you to step up and make something happen. And so if you're looking for your sign to get going, this is it. The world has never been more ready for you. And I can't wait to see what you do as a result of seeing yourself as a change maker and then going off to lead change from wherever you are.
Thank you so much for your valuable time today. I really appreciate all your inputs, your valuable stories and lessons. And I will finish your book, I promise. Halfway there. I'm at page 100 something. But this book, I feel like it's, like you said, a vehicle, a tool that really helped me start making changes. And I really appreciate you conducting this interview with me because after taking your class, I truly, truly wanted to speak with you in an interpersonal level and learn more about your insights, your background, your history. And this is absolutely amazing for me.
Oh, well, thank you for reaching out and thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much, Professor.